Despite being known as the rookie killer, the girl couldn't bear the feeling of betrayal. Her emotions plummeted as tears began to fall down her face. At this moment, Ed only relied on a few clues to once again control the entire situation based on time. Terry and his group had reached the second floor. They wanted to capture Clavers in the Sound City and have him join the boss team on the third floor. The events unfolded too quickly. Even Kelly, the maid, couldn't stop Terry and his group. They immediately approached their target, the Ophelia Pavilion on the fourth floor. But the difficulty on the fourth floor was too high, and the defensive magic was attacking the students. That's the boss of the fourth floor, Verlin, who is controlled by the defensive magic. He placed the crystal gem of the defense magic management system at the center of the management room. All of this was orchestrated by the conspiracy of Alice and Rottle. Villain is destroying the Ophelia's Institute in the face of the boss power, forcing Talley and his group to defend. The students were all wondering what was happening, if the dormitory would collapse. At this point, the students were no longer calm, each trying to find a way to escape from the Ophelia's Institute. This conspiracy was gradually coming to an end. Terry asked if he had a magic sealing potion like on the first floor. Elvira explained that the potion does not work on the magic circle that was engraved. He then used the dragon's breath herb to prepare to seal off the entire corridor. It was a supportive magic spell of the potion, too weak to last long. Elvira then asked Cleverus to cooperate with Terry to defeat Villain, and Cleverus had to stand at the forefront to resist Villain's madness. The magical defense was chaotic in this corridor, but fortunately, they were covered by the magic circle. Villain was not surprised, on the contrary, he shed tears of excitement. The entire corridor on the fourth floor was engulfed in flames. Downstairs, Phyllis was still worried. Was Ed's wound torn? Ed explained that most of his wounds were not from him. He focused on the golden carriage, none other than the fake master, Golden King of Tuesday, who had left the school. Was he also waiting for the Ophelia's Institute to be destroyed? Ed discovered the boss on the third floor, the twin maids, Sydney. Sydney was one of the orphans that Alice had adopted. Alice had been bribed by Rothel, so Sydney had to be the boss of the third floor. But because she was with Ed, Sydney couldn't betray Alice. So there must be a problem. Suppose Alice betrayed Rothel and stood by Ed, everything would make sense. In that case, Rothel would be destroyed. The main fighter against the political struggles along with Penia would cease to exist. In the battle with the Rostaler family in level 4, the main player Talley would lose his greatest helper, Rothel. Instead, he would replace the small boss Todd, who had suffered much to replace Rothel. Ed dared not imagine such madness. Ed was about to ask Yenneker to do something. The current situation was urgent, something he couldn't accomplish. Yenneker agreed without questioning. Alice wrote a letter to Gold King Ed, the content of which was: Rothel knew that Mr. Ed had killed his biological parents, so he wanted revenge. He always focused on attracting the big businessmen of the Ed Guild and the Knights of the Philosopher Book to bring Mr. Ed to the school, making him unable to handle the issues of the Ed Guild. For some reason, he had obtained a secret letter proving Rothel's conspiracy and held Alice hostage. He asked Gold King Ed for more money, otherwise she would stand with Rothel. Alice was about to lose all power. There are no more lawn-serving maids left. This year, he had put himself in an extreme situation. It was his only choice to protect the orphanage he managed. Based on the money Gold King was paying, he would decide whether to cooperate or not. That's why Alice betrayed and threatened Rothel not to make a mistake. Sir Ed will come to Ophelis immediately. Alice did not expect Rothel to react like that. In her eyes, Rothel is seeking revenge on the Golden King. He is not a good person, of course, he is not. At this moment, a loud noise is heard as Terrace Group has dealt with the real criminal, the female housekeeper Villain. Rothel is being threatened by Alice with a knife at Terrace's throat, and the group dare not take strong action. At this moment, Rothel dodges Alice's arrows and rushes towards Terry. Now all he has to do is say that Alice is the mastermind, the criminal, and he will be freed. Rothel really can't say those words. Elvira, concerned, asks, "What's wrong with Rothel?" Rothel doesn't answer, just covers his face and runs away. The Golden King Ed does not trust his subordinates, he will surely come himself. The collapse of Ed and the responsibility for the losses all point to him. So the Golden King ETS overthrow plan has been carried out. If the Golden King does not leave, the plan cannot be executed. Send a secret message in the back room and then run away. As long as he is not caught, the plan will succeed. No one will understand him, nor can he fill the void in his shattered heart. What he can do now is go to the front room, take one step, just send a message, and everything will end. At this moment, in the Ophelis Hall, the Golden King Ed has reached the first floor of the small boss dormitory. Ed once again blocks him here. His reason is that the dormitory is about to collapse before the teacher comes. No one is allowed in this building. The Golden King Ed asks if there is a special notice for him from the school. Ed says it's his decision. There are currently 3 people managing the plot who want to take over to make Ed resign and Rottle avenge his parents. Stop Rottle's plan and buy the Wise One's magic. Ed, along with Alice, is caught between the two. Although he doesn't know the reason for Alice's betrayal, he doesn't need to stop him. According to the original plot, he will meet Terry, and Terry will deal with Alice perfectly. Ed also believes that Terry will solve everything, so he just needs to keep the Golden King Ed from entering Ophelis and everything will go according to the original script. Ed greets the Golden King as if he were a nobleman who would surely inform the court beforehand. So by the logic of his actions, the Golden King Ed concludes that Ed supports Rottle. To bring the game story back on track, he has succeeded in subduing a girl 10 minutes ago. Ed has asked Yenneker to use magic to cross the Ophelis dormitory floor. Ed asks why she doesn't leave the dorm. She answers that she doesn't want to run around even if the building collapses. The muscular man is not believed to be a mage. And that man is Giggs, the Grassgun. Giggs apologizes to Yenneker for Grassgun's actions. Yenneker blames herself, saying it's all her fault. Ed immediately comforts Yenneker. Everything has passed, looking at the two affectionately. Giggs asks Ed and Yenneker if they're a couple. Yenneker blushes and denies repeatedly, then secretly looks at Ed and asks if he's mad. Ed calmly says no. The question seems a bit illogical. Hearing that, Giggs immediately apologizes and asks Ed why he had to break the wall to find him. Ed says there is something important to bother Giggs. At this point, Ed has stopped the Golden King Ed. Ed also realizes that Ed is on Rottle's side. A2 asked a duck whether he was seduced by the appearance of the fox blood child, and if not careful, it would bite back. If the Lokda bought him with gold, he would willingly pay double the amount of gold, but a duck refused. Since a duck did not receive any gold, offering multiple times would be futile. The Golden King A2 confirmed that a duck could not communicate, then signaled his black-clothed men to remove a duck. A duck scanned around the body once without hesitation, turned around, and ran, but the 2 black-clothed men obscured the front. Just then, a loud explosion made the 2 black-clothed men disappear with magic. Giggs and Yenneker were hiding here. A duck requested them to extend the time he would go upstairs to check the situation. After this encounter, Giggs mentioned owing a favor to him. The Golden King A2 did not underestimate direct enemies and ordered all his soldiers to attack fiercely. A duck had to go upstairs to find Lokda. A duck easily spotted Lokda, inquired about his health, and asked him to follow for escape. In Lokda's eyes, there is no kindness or luck unconditionally in this world. The receptionist of the Merchants Guild won Lokda's heart, hoping for profitable information. The guild staff in front of Lokda became generous as he usually gave them money. Tina, the pet caretaker, liked Lokda. Because Lokda usually fed premium food, a duck confirmed with Lokda whether Alice had betrayed him. Lokda was also angry at his carelessness. Yenneker grew up in a good environment and love. So he treats others with love and kindness. Lokda suggested to a duck that he saw Yenneker looking at a duck with warm eyes. Maybe they could have a relationship. So he revealed the entire plan to Alice. Lokda, who never trusted anyone, made such a low-level mistake. Dreaming of a companion, Lokda bribed 5 people, including Minister Alice and the twins serving under him, Shenny and Kelly. There are also low-level students representing Villain and the noble Muro Eat. Alice, Shenny and Kelly, who were members of the Golden King, felt that Villain should help, and Eat would not help him, so Ed had no reason to help him. Lokda stopped, apologized to a duck, agreed on 20 gold coins, which might not be feasible. A duck grabbed Lokda. If he is caught by the Golden King A2 now, his life would be ruined. The important thing now is to find a way to escape. A duck ordered Lokda. Just simply explain the current situation, don't trust others before seeing clear benefits. Surely that's it. He couldn't restrain himself and spoke out. At the main store of the Merchants Guild, the Golden King A2 planned to manipulate stock prices. Due to the sharp drop in armor prices after the hunt for mountain monsters last year in the east. So they bought them all at low prices. The Golden King A2 needed a lot of gold for this plan. Lokda told A2 that he had found someone willing to buy the Book of Virtuous People at a high price. The Golden King A2 immediately sent Rotel to the Western Venia Academy to plan to seize the Book of Virtue. Then Ed immediately understood that this kind of goods is ABC. The 3 merchants monopolize the market with low-priced goods. Merchants intentionally raise prices. The more scarce the item is, the more people want to buy it. Selling out the inventory now will yield a huge profit. But the prerequisite for pushing prices is trusting B and C to sell goods secretly behind A, leading to a sudden drop in prices. At this time, wanting to monopolize goods, A did not hesitate to borrow money to buy goods, leading to bankruptcy. And that is what the Golden King of Tu Lokda intended, to let him bear the heavy burden of bankruptcy directly. Rotail has been continuously buying a lot of trade unions B and C to carry out this plan, but only when the Golden King Et leaves the trade union 6 that Rotail bought from the 6 major merchants can they use the selling rights. Et understood right away. Rotail caused the incident at Ophelis to put the school into financial crisis. Only by forcing the school to sell the Book of the Wise Et needs money and leave the trade union. The opportunity for other unions to sell armor. Rotail was surprised when Et understood the whole situation. Et pointed out what Rotail needs to do now is to try to inform the trade union to sell armor immediately. Rotail said that in his room there is a bird waiting to contact the trade union, needed for the bird to fly out to contact the commanders of the trade union to act before the armor is sold. Hide carefully before the armor is sold. Rotail will win, but the Golden King will surely attack. The plan is to catch Rotail tonight, forcing him to disclose the plan and the traitors in the trade union. Et asks Rotail to hide in a place where no one can find him. The Golden King Et will definitely be on the bridge leading out of the school. Arranging done, Et asks Rotail to find a horse-drawn carriage to leave the school. On the way, Rotail leaves the carriage and asks the coachman not to follow. Then the coachman finds a suitable place to discard the carriage. Everyone will think Rotail has fled the school. Rotail needs to go to ET's room in the North Forest, just 3 days. Et releases the dove in Rothiel's room. The rest of the issues will be handled by the trade union. Seeing Rotail completely exhausted, Et helps him up and says that someone is watching the back door of the dormitory, but he will handle it. Rotail is surprised to look at Et. Et knows him too well as a longtime partner. Et asks Rotail what the problem is. Why are you so helpless, unlike your usual self? Rotail understands and asks Et why he is helping him. At this point, Et cannot find a reason, just saying that he feels the need to do so. Et leaves without looking back. Rotail stays alone, his face red, his breath heavy. He doesn't know what that loud noise is. It could be Alice and Terry fighting each other, or it could be closer, like the ground floor fighting. But that noise comes from closer to them. Although unbelievable, it is Rothiel's heartbeat. At this time, the back door of Ophelis Institute. The caretaker unexpectedly did not expect Et to come out from there, and the caretaker is the twin maid Sheni. According to the plan, Rotail returned with a knife to find Et. Et is exhausted and can no longer resist. This is ET's only mistake. As soon as the Ophelis border guards return to normal, the battle continues. Alice has sword skills no less than the combat students, perfect combat combined with high-level magic. But still can't defeat Alyssa Louis because he is the main character of the third round of the 3-match 3-seed battle to subdue the Minister Alice. On the other hand, Et has exhausted his magic power, now only able to perform basic magic 2 or 3 times. Sheni releases a stream of light attacking Et. Et naturally dodges the attack. Sheni is surprised how Et can dodge her attack. Players know Shanice's attack pattern, floor 3, and react to her actions. Et first kicks Shanice's delivery man, then Sheni prepares to draw the small knife on her leg. However, Et has also realized this. Et grabs Shanice's left hand, she can't take the small knife. Weapons fixed on Shanice's legs appear, weapons flying far away. The pair of small knives fall out of Shanice's hands, pushed into a dangerous situation, and without hesitation, she uses her last secret. In the next episode, the ability to share magical thinking will be shared every day, using the opponent's ability once. Now Ni is controlling the battlefield magic. Control 5 flying knives, 5 flying knives towards Ed. Ed avoids the important parts but still gets hurt with 2 wounds. Initially, Ni was confident in his plan, then he turned to show surprise as Ed was only slightly injured. Ed understands that it is only temporary use of someone else's abilities and there are many loopholes. Even the wound from the knife is not deep. Ed easily defeats the female servant Ni. Ni has no chance to retaliate, and Ed also uses this opportunity to kick away Ni's weapons. Ed perfectly predicts every move of Ni. Ni can only be rebellious because he has not been used for a minute and has been resolved by the opponent. Ni yells, demanding Ed to step back because he does not want to disappoint the master Alice. Ed gently states that Alice has lost. Ni talks loudly about how Alice is in pain, what battles she has been through. Do you know how many orphanage children Alice has saved? Even she herself is one of them. This is something Ed does not know because there is no deep content about Alice in the Sviania Night story. At this point, Alice is still fighting with the main character of the game, Terry, transformed into Terry with white hair. easily breaking Alice's magic. The distance between them is getting closer. Both cannot avoid hearing a loud bang. The battle on the upper floor is also in the final stage. At this point, Ed tells Nee that even if he knows all this, his opinion will not change. Ed strikes Nee a final blow. Nee grits his teeth, swearing never to forgive Ed for helping Roddle. Then Nee loses consciousness. Ed does not know anything about the subplot, so he can't do anything else. There are many untold stories in this world, so we need to consider the balance between the harm and the benefits. Alice secretly helps others. There is no right or wrong. Some people like to discuss philosophy and do not worry about dressing, so they have time to think about those things. Ed pulls Nee, the servant, to a safe place, not wet. Now he has more important things to do. Ed has overcome and learned new skills to endure temporary pain and reduce energy consumption. Ed breaks the window of the room with a stone, then enters the room through the broken window. And that luxurious room is Roddle's room. Ed discovers the personality here and writes a letter. The content definitely relates to the Golden King Ed. After 3 days at the Sviania Academy, he returns to the guild. He has sold all the goods that have increased in price at this time. The personality flew far on the rainy night. At this point, Ed is seriously injured, can only pray in his heart. Without the help of Jiggs and Yenneker Roddle, Ed would have captured the present and moved towards the decay of the horse carriage that Roddle hired to escape from the academy. When the farrier was captured, he knew Roddle did not leave the academy. It was too late. With just the letter that Ed sent to the Golden King's Guild, Ed would end. Ed thinks his plan is perfect and breathes a sigh of relief. At this moment, Roddle advances. Ed feels that Roddle is very friendly when she comes to pick him up. But then he rethinks and feels something is not right. Roddle is the daughter of the Golden King, and all 5 people he bought know that Roddle is the mastermind behind, and when the Golden King Ed collapses, Alice kai ko the dua vau Roddle va hai ko hao gai sin doi sheni va kylie theo Alice den villain de moi chuk nu lan truok nung tu gok nin kua Roddle Edward Taylor Kong the moi duok bang tien bien so shuat heen trong khu rung hio lan ne. Killing Edward is a perfect crime. Roddle Cahern is essentially a cunning person who sees people as tools. Once at this point, Edward must use his brainpower to survive, but his body's strength cannot keep up. At this point, Roddle took out a small knife and stabbed Edward. Edward thought he was about to end, but Roddle took off his shirt to bandage Edward's wound with the cut shirt. Roddle said he didn't expect it to be so dangerous. After that, he took Edward to a wooden house. Roddle cried and said the rain had stopped. Light a fire before your body warms up, put on a ponytail and imagine the wonderful feeling of becoming a gentle assistant who has overcome difficulties with Ed and must meet Ed today. This is an expert in love who has never loved before. Du Phi Dan Quoc Ka Mang Song Nung Roddle Van Ko Gang Ko Dai Thoi Jian Edward Gi Rang Roddle Ko the Da Bad Jia Din Kua Noi How De Lam Con Tin Roddle Noi Rang Kai Kan K Hoch Lan Ne Ton Kong An Ta Se Tro Ton Noi Ko Kian Luke Thuk Su Kua Hoi Thuong Nyan Ad Vi Ve An Ta No Moan. De la mo tho thuan rat dang jia nung Edward Kong me quan tam an ta van dang bung lua Roddle Noi Rang an ta nyat din se kong quen on kua Edward Niok no an dung quen 20 dong vang da wa. Roddle asks Edward if his relationship with Senior Yenneker is good. Edward admits and says Yenneker is a good person. Roddle admits that Senior Yenneker is a good person and he respects him very much. Edward clearly feels Roddle wants to say something. After thinking for a while, Roddle says he is not a good person. At the same time, at Vua Vankua Ophilus, after receiving a report from his subordinates, hurriedly left. Seemingly unconcerned about Ophilus, Jiggs faces difficulty even as a skilled warrior when facing a few mercenaries. However, the mercenaries are now retreating abnormally. Instead of stopping the mercenaries now need to stop ally Yenneker, who is just worried suddenly becoming fierce. Jiggs is ready to stop Yenneker for the safety of everyone. Jiggs asks what happened to Yenneker or who made her angry. Because the soul of the flying bird informed Yenneker that Edward and Roddle are getting close to each other. Yenneker quickly denies with a horrified look. Jiggs says he is not angry for a few days because his school uniform is broken. It's inconvenient to wear to school. When Jiggs lent Edward a school uniform, he also reported the current situation at Villain Academy. Not surprised that he had to bear all the destruction of Ophilus and the head servant Alice did not say anything. Edward was lucky to prevent the plot. The key figure Roddle left the stage, and Golden King Ed remained unchanged. It seems that Rotel's battle plan worked in the previous game, causing Edward's health to deteriorate, causing body aches. Unable to do heavy physical work in the previous battle, Edward's living level was also raised. He unlocked the advanced skill slot that can learn and use soul magic in conjunction with spirit magic and learned magic skills to make utensils and combat weapons. Edward didn't intend to waste slots for current soul magic spells, just need to sign a contract with any summer spirit is enough at this point. Yenneker arrives. He says that he has been very headache recently, so he went to the forest to relax and rest. Ed thinks Yenneker may have been injured while helping him before, but Yenneker smiles and denies. Then he asks about Rotel's situation in the wooden house. Although Yenneker is resting, she is very sad. Although the incident at Ophelis has ended successfully, Rotel still has a lot to do. He needs to convince Alice, the former minister, and make a specific plan to buy the Book of Angels in 3 days. Waiting for a response from the Chamber of Commerce at Rotel can only worry. In this small wooden house, Rotel does not hate this feeling because when he is with Ed Rossdale, his heart will continue to beat non-stop. Ed's unconditional kindness and faith make him feel at ease even though for others this is reasonable, but for Rotel, who has lived in the dark all his life, this is more valuable than gold, so he never gives way to anyone, even when the partner is Yenneker Pilorov. Yenneker's family or friends all around her love her unconditionally. It's okay to be alone if he doesn't give in. He can only fight in the dirty mud. He is an expert in this field for 3 days living together. Rotel is ready to use gold to bury the small wooden house, but he doesn't want Ed to think it's sympathy. Rotel rushed to help Ed pay tuition. No problem, the money is not for the front money before. Don't get me wrong, Tsunere style like a textbook is too silly. He really can't say because Rotel Cahern has no love experience. When Rotel hesitated, Lucy entered the wooden house. Rotel asked her what she was doing here. Lucy just said there is warm sunshine. Before Lucy could sleep well, Ed drove her out and told Rotel not to care. Rotel asked if Lucy often came. Ed explained that she should consider her a freak. Rotel was also surprised that there is still an opponent, but 3 days is enough to count. The reality is completely different from Rotel's thoughts because Yenneker Pilorov has arrived, and in the wooden house there's a Lucy sleeping. This makes Rotel. Finally, Ed breathed a sigh of relief as he learned a new skill for making bricks. He poured sand into a dry mold and used flame magic to fire stackable bricks as a fireplace. As what happened at Ophelis Institute was postponed, the final fireplace was finally completed. Ed, Yenneker, and Rotel are eating seasoned grilled meat. The grilled meat is still from Belmania, the last time the steward. At that time, Rotel asked Ed, besides the 20 gold coins, did he want anything else? While Ed was thinking, Yenneker stared over here unknowingly. Ed asked if there were any magic academic items that couldn't be used. Rotel said they needed to return to check the inventory. Yenneker looked darkly at Rotel at this point. Ed suddenly told Yenneker that he wanted to ask her a favor. Recently he has been learning the magic of the fairies and wants to sign a contract with the summer fairy. Yenneker is restless, saying that he is Ed's teacher and can help Ed sign a contract with the fairy immediately. Yenneker summons a planet spirit to warn Ed about the cold weather. At this moment, the fire spirit Mac Catch emanates from deep NY Tap, kneeling down to apologize to Ed. The fairy constantly says that this month's daily schedule has no time for fairy magic. When he attended the weekly press conference at Dex Institute because the food supply was insufficient, he was very busy. Now he is stuck in a wooden house. Unable to concentrate, Yenneker suddenly shouted loudly upon hearing the regular report. She lamented the disappearance of the little bird's soul and asked Ed if he had heard it too. Ed replied that he had heard the weekly report for the whole week. At this moment, Rotel approached. He mentioned that the magical materials were still abundant. Ed could provide Rotel with 20 gold coins as promised in exchange for magical items. Rotel expressed that talking about money hurt him and he couldn't sell. He just asked Ed to come to the trade guild every 3 days to have tea and chat. Rotel was immediately warned by Yenneker. Ed had helped him so much that it should be free. Rotel stated he was a businessman with his own professional ethics. Yenneker exposed that it was all because of Rotel. However, Rotel didn't admit it, and Ed didn't think he could learn magic and the skills of fairies. At this point, a mysterious figure broke the chaotic situation. It was Belmania, the new steward. He explained that he came to deliver unfortunate news. It was a message from the former steward Alistair, who took Ed's first kiss. The final boss of Part 2 had also appeared. The struggle for the Wise Month's book had begun recently. Yenneker's good friend Clara agreed with Steward Bermania that there was a super secret. It was that Yenneker had fallen in love with Ed. Bermania had known this early on, so he calmly persuaded her. Ed's recent demeanor had also improved significantly. But friends could only cheer for Yenneker. Clara also mentioned that this was not the main topic. The main topic was Yenneker, who always mentioned Rotel and recently, and was absent during the start of learning with Edris de Lel. On the other hand, between men and women, Yenneker had no chance against Rotel and Ed, who never had a clear attitude. Not knowing if he was a tough block of wood or a fugitive, Belmania felt Ed was neither nor a fugitive. He thought Ed simply didn't have enough energy to love Clara, affirming that Ed surely thought his spring had come joyfully. Bellmania's heart was observing Ed's relationships, a spoiled cat standing in front of a fish store, an innocent cat trembling in front of a tiger, and finally, a house cat when called by Ed. Bellmania woke up. Evaluating Ed's feminine relationship, standing at the front of the fish store, a sly cat eating in front of the tiger, a trembling innocent cat, and finally a domestic cat according to Ed's call, Bellmania had just awakened, feeling a headache seeing them. Rotel discovered a hidden agenda in the wooden house and was displeased about being discovered by the guards. Although Ed's school uniform had been repaired, Rotel was also warned by the messenger pigeon. The king's overthrow plan had been completed. King Ed had almost lost all power and had undoubtedly been overthrown. Rotel believed King Ed might resist in the end, but now the struggle was futile. Ed mentioned the possibility of another mutation. Rotel hid in a small wooden house, discovered by Ophelius, the female minister. He was annoyed about being found here. Ed, though in repaired uniform, was cursed by Rotel for being too old. Rotel also received a letter from the pigeon messenger. The biggest issue now was between Alice Rotel and King Ed Surig, who was monitoring the next position and would choose an orphanage with his assistants clearly stated. Alice's list of expenses and support methods was increasingly busy, affecting the health of the school. Therefore, no one noticed his condition as he spoke less. He can't continue to work, he can only bet his whole life on himself. There are still those who pursue Alice understand his situation and feelings because Rotel has defeated Alice still wants to continue pursuing him he also knows. It is very difficult to make the other believe that he has betrayed once so he did not send threatening letters, but sent this and this revelation brought no benefit to Rotel. Rotel can only agree to Alice's request. Rotel receives the letter cheerfully. Ed can clearly feel that Rotel's mood has relaxed at this moment. Rotel says he will leave and asks Ed to go to the branch of the trading guild to sign the contract. Ed raises the torch, reminding Rotel to be careful on the way back. Rotel keeps staring at Ed as if planning something. Ed asks what happened to Rotel and wonders why Asu is so tall. Although a little nervous, he wants to quickly enter the city, can only take a little risk. You know, Ed-senpai, the relationships between people are basically cross each other like the tie in front of his eyes is slightly askew. Ed seems indifferent. It's hard to watch how Rotel explains that dressing neatly is fine anyway. He is a student of Sivinia school. As soon as Ed has not reacted yet, Rotel grabs Ed's tie and tiptoed to kiss his lips. If you let the girl take the lead, it will cause disgust, so next time, Ed should be more self-controlled. After saying that, Ed calmly turns away. After creating some distance, Rotel hurriedly runs and disappears into the forest. Ed feels the need to practice rejecting others. The theory is to stay away from all main characters, but in reality, it seems that he can't control at night in the forest full of bright stars. Ed feels the need to practice rejecting others. The theory is to stay away from all main characters, but in reality, it seems that things happen that he can't control. Night in the forest, the stars shining brightly. The sound of crickets mixed with the sound of the fire burning in the fireplace, but the storyline of the game seems to be constantly changing, unrelated to Ed's opinion. Suddenly, there is a feeling of being drawn into the center of the story initially intended to stand outside the storyline, just picking up what he deserves. This action plan doesn't change. Ed doesn't have any dreams, just needs to graduate from the academy. Not long after, Ed realizes that the plan seems very simple, but also very daring and difficult. Finally, the summer ends, autumn comes, only the tower waving its tail. A regular report begins. The soul informs Ninika about the fire fox. Rotel kissed the girl he loves, which Ninika did not react to. The soul of the bird-shaped bird continues to advise that things cannot continue like this. Rotel has kissed love, but Ninika has not yet realized. The bird-shaped soul continues to advise that if action is not taken immediately, Ed will be lost at that time. Even Takan said that he also saw the kiss was very passionate. This fire fox is very good at playing with emotions. Ninika finally couldn't control herself and asked how Ed reacted. Takan said that Ninika asked the right question. Takan said that Ed clearly rejected the other person even though he kissed. Ed's expression did not change at all. Even Takan couldn't restrain himself, saying that Ed clearly rejected the other person with a cold face. Takan analyzed that Ed could be a virgin boy or not consider the other person as a woman. Hearing this, Ninika finally breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, Takan suddenly shouted out loud, "But disregarding the condition, men are very weak in defense. In my experience, a crazy fox exists that is not good for you." The cutting tower becomes fierce, being taken over by the star and the elephant. Still saying, "Do you want that fox to steal Ed away?" "No, haven't you promised to teach him the magic of fairy law, so next time you're alone you also have to kiss him?" The brutal spirit advises Yenika not to listen to Takan, just need to keep the natural essence. At this time Takan suddenly spoke up, highlighting, "Your innocence isn't bad either." The brutal spirit asked Yenika, "When you're with Ed do you feel nervous, heart beating fast and images?" Then Yenika's flushed face talked about feeding each other. Meanwhile Ed is feeding Lucy. Lucy unexpectedly gets angry. Too bad she keeps complaining not to treat it like a machine. Ed says the seasoning is too little so it's hard to adjust. Currently can only wait for more ingredients to improve cooking skills. Improving a skill independently low efficiency so can only improve in a balanced way. The problem is Ed is too busy after starting the school year. Suburban survival time is reduced. Even sleep is only 5 to 6 hours. While considering suburban survival efficiency, also have to observe whether the plot progresses smoothly. Regularly observe the 4 main characters of Thale Academy's combat department. Although rarely seen him, but he develops very smoothly. Ayla is Thale's supportive spirit, fully fulfilling her role. Princess Pena seems to be living quite well. Conflict between her and Rothel will soon occur. Need to continue paying attention. Rothel Golden Girl walks on fire. Need to continue paying attention. King Et's downfall is soon unknown. What will happen? Ignoring King Et's affairs. Rothel still wants to get the Book of the Philosopher recently. Ed really needs more time to observe Professor Long for the final event of Act 2. He is Professor Crestos, a man holding a wild beast on his shoulder and leaning shoulder to a girl. This was immediately discovered by the Academy assistant Claire Alphen. Professor Crestos suspects Ophelus event has the hand of the mastermind. Claire Alphen's assistant also came to submit documents. Professor Crestos reminded him not to forget Joy. Shortly after the office of assistant Claire Alphen returned, Claire Alphen breathed a sigh of relief for receiving specific information about the Ophelus event. Claire, with a tired body, looked at the event document has ended but still felt uneasy. Then assistant Claire stared at Ed, a declining nobleman. Meanwhile Rothel still deceives Ed into the Ed trade union. Rothel said she was too busy to forget to bring the contract and asked Ed to come back next time. Ed also noticed Rothel's unusual attire. Rothel deliberately observed Ed's expression, waving her hair. Ed asked if there was anything important that made Rothel embarrassed. Can only explain a bit. Rothel said Ed's little wooden house is completed. Do you need to do more? Ed said the Ed trade union sells high-end products, can't buy. Rothel uses magic to break Ed's chair leg and says the chair is broken, definitely can't be sold. Ed can only express gratitude. Even though Rothel did that much, he still didn't show any expression, even sitting down next to Ed's table. He told Ed that this chair is broken, definitely can't be sold. Ed can only express gratitude. Even Rothel did that much, he saw Ed's expression still unchanged, even sat down next to Ed's table. Clearly, I also directly confronted Le Doc Ni, showing that Ed may not see him as a woman, but I see Ed as a predecessor, as a man. Le Doc Ni then showed his willingness to help Ed, which stemmed from his own conscience. I don't expect Ed to respond directly now, and he still doesn't care, but one day he will make Ed stand firm in front of Angel's confident smile. Being confident in winning is like being in hell. Even though the body trembles, one can still keep the secret of inner weakness. After leaving the Ed2 Trading Association, Ed returned to Ninika Academy to officially teach Ed about soul printing for the first time. Ninika summoned a summer soul. Then he handed Ed the fire god Mog and greeted Ed based on the covenant chosen in the weekly briefing meeting last week. The first light god passed the interview for the second time by reaching the top score. Again, through the third time, the spiritual conference finally through the fourth time, the experimental chemical substance in the northern forest, the internal organization of magic performance training, achieved the highest achievement. At the same time, he can proudly say that he is a summer spirit equal. A person with the best communication skills, even though his body is burning, must also burn his wholehearted will to assist Ed's subordinates before playing in Te Duie, falling to the ground to find the holy sword. He has learned about spiritual energy, but they all fight with the same spirit. Also encouraging each other, even having a kind of mutual feeling of the current situation and internal discord. Ed asked Jenica what happened. Jenica explained to Ed to recommend his soul. He immediately found the highest performance spirit, although this in the selection process. Encountering a few large and small nail troubles, this selection is still high-quality fire spirits. Taka handed Ed the fire gold Mogeka and explained to Ed the basis for releasing the spirit. Intensity can sense the physical or magical intensity. In other words, big or small fires are their own basis for spiritual induction. Ed excitedly looks towards the fire spirit Mog because for Ed, this is like carrying a heating stove like that. Ed easily with Charlotte's fire spirit Mog. The current contract. Ed can also study extreme magic spiritual induction, understand the spirit, feel the shared spirit. Ed believes that fire spirit Mac Cash is extremely useful for survival in front of extraordinary tools, even without matches. Can witness Ed excitedly. Jenica said that just follow her to study, you can quickly and jointly sign the contract for the spirit. Behind the spirits also need to fight and practice. But this must wait a little bit of time to use in combat training. At this time, Jenica also said that there are many advanced spiritual induction performance videos. Jenica mentioned next time to bring to Ed suddenly closed Ed's mouth and discovered Jenica was not right. There are many people waiting in line to teach me magic spirits. Time is limited in my mind. The Karm Tower reminds me that I cannot unilaterally treat others well. Clara reminded that sometimes you need to play softly to tightly tie deep. NY Tap can only tremble and tell Ed. It's too much to let me teach you spiritual magic for free. Ed agreed to that. He took out his pocket and prepared to pay Jenica. Jenica has stopped Ed's life. How to waste money between us and not a relationship that can be measured by money and it hurts us. Ed's question is not that we can't teach for free, but what happened to Yenikal. Yenikal can only admit to Ed what friends taught him, that he cannot unilaterally treat you well and say that there is something to learn to refuse, and Ed thinks he is right and reminds Yenikal that he has a good friend. He is not like that with everyone and tells Ed next time he teaches at the combat internship will speak to Ed. The time can still prepare Ed. Not bad to feel sensitive to Janika's jewelry like that. Farewell, Ed. Ethan successfully learned magic skills through academic equipment provided by Roddle. After consuming a high-level skill card slot, Ethan often uses ink to burn when there is no fire. After the fire runs out of energy, he will use the stove to maintain warm air. To ensure a stable living environment, Ethan signed a contract with the Moog Fire Spirit to help reduce his psychological burden. After completing all tasks, Ethan decided to check the hunting trap network. At this time, Assistant Claire also came to the forest. He thinks more and more that the events of Ophirius have a dark shadow, and that person is Ethan Rose Taylor. Other characters at the scene are only Ophirius school students or related staff, but Taylor and Ethan have no relationship with Ophirius school. Except for Taylor solving the event, only Love and Taylor remain living in the strange northern forest that has been strange since before Assistant Claire with a challenging spirit has come to see and witness an unbelievable scene. At that moment, Claire saw Ethan dragging a beast carrying a girl on his shoulders. Claire, witnessing that scene, horrified because Ethan is carrying an important person like Magician Clotha and an equal opponent with school director Severinia, is Ober. Lucy Merrill through this scene speculates that Ethan defeated Lucy and behind the Ophirius incident is Taylor. The noble who is crumbling. Claire is also preparing to rescue Lucy from being captured. Lucy Merrill decides to use Ethan to attack the Taylor family. Roddle, who knows about this incident, even blushes in front of Princess Penny. The war for the Book of the Sage has begun, but Ethan's body is having problems. Merrill Pena decides to use Ed to attack the Rostiel family. Rotel, when she knows this information, even turns pale in front of Princess Pena. The war for the Book of the Wise Man has also begun, but suddenly Ed's body has problems. In the middle of the night, assistant teacher Claire discovered Ed with a wild animal carcass and was pulling Lucy back to the cabin. Ed threw the wild animal carcass near the fire and pushed Lucy into the cabin. Remembering the work tomorrow, Ed returned to the cabin to sleep. Although Claire's assistant is a professor, he is not good at practical combat, so he secretly saves Lucy from fear of being discovered by Ed. Claire's assistant is approaching Lucy like a keen cat, never sleeping deeply. She senses the touch of the owner and wakes up startled, so when Claire's assistant approaches Lucy startled and grabs the witch hat, creating distance and asking someone. Claire's assistant introduces himself as an academy assistant, but Lucy doesn't care. She returns to the small cabin and seems to be looking for something in the darkness. Lucy's cold eyes evaluate Claire's assistant at this point. He even puts a piece of dried meat in his mouth. Lucy quickly takes a bag of dried meat from the cabin and flies away, leaving Claire's assistant looking bewildered. The next morning, Claire's assistant goes to Professor Crest's lab to ask, "Do you know Ed Rostiel, the one who was kicked out of the house?" Professor Crest says there is no need to know about useless people. Claire's assistant explains that he went to the northern forest while investigating the issue of Orpheus. Discovering that Ed Rose Taylor defeated Lucy Merrill, Professor Crest believes that assistant Claire has a mental issue. Claire reveals that although not permitted, he used magic to recreate a historical impression on the first floor of Ophelus. Crest reprimands Claire for acting on his own and demands he prepare a voluntary confession. Claire admits to having written a confession in advance and claims Ed Rose Taylor is the mastermind behind the scenes. He also pushed Lucy to be defeated by him. Professor Crest feels Ed only helped Lucy change her resting place. Crest dismisses Claire and forces him to bring the confession immediately. At this moment, Professor Crest discovers a marble left on the table, on which it is written that although Ed prevented Taylor's group, they are soon to be defeated because Ty Lee has appeared. Along with alchemy genius Elvira, ordinary people cannot stop them. Remembering this, Crest continues to gaze intently at the marble and gradually realizes something is wrong. After some time, Professor Crest rests his chin in contemplation. By now, Ed has completed a new creation. He engraves an explosion magic system on a sword that can activate spells within a certain distance. Due to the pre-engraved speed of spell activation and good magical efficiency, Ed greatly admires it. The sword for wilderness survival is engraved with various magic spells, feeling proud. Mog feels Ed lacks knowledge because he has been using it for a long time. The longer the user uses the weapon, the better the engraved effects. Mog continuously praises Ed and is ready to organize a celebration for him. This makes Ed unable to bear it, grasping Mog's wing. Mog repeatedly apologizes, saying he was wrong. Wanting to make amends but also embarrassed not knowing where he went wrong. Only by knowing what one did wrong can they acknowledge and make changes. Ed tells Mog not to make contracts with souls and necromancers. After receiving magical power, their rank will increase. Like skilled individuals such as Yenica, who can make contracts with lower-level souls, have made them grateful. But Ed is just a novice necromancer and should not be treated too politely by souls. Does Mog benefit from Yenica? This leaves Mog's lower-level soul unable to answer. Ed continues to ask, forcing Mog to admit that signing a contract with Elvira will receive higher-level magical power. Thanks to this, the lower-level soul's growth rate is several times faster. Ed immediately asks if there is anything else being hidden. Mog explains that Ed is very greedy, always seeking to please him because the soul hierarchy system is very strict. Some souls are confident because they were born earlier. Ed says not to be too polite to him because everyone has to work to survive. But Mog continues to mock Ed, leaving him no choice but to use his fighting skills. With no progress, Ed's increased strength has made him on par with any grown man. Ed's store is full of meat, vegetables, and spices, escaping hunger. All that's left is studying in school. With time and effort, it will be resolved. Needing to reduce sleep and force knowledge into his head, Ed falls asleep only to be awakened by Yenica. Having awakened Ed who was preparing to sleep, Yenica advised Ed not to try too hard. Although being active is good, health is the most important. Today, Ed received 3 letters. The first letter from the principal, the second from the Merchants Guild. Both letters are not very important, but the third letter needs to be focused on reading because the content of this letter proves that the plot has changed a lot. The original battle for the Knight's Book between the Academy and the Merchants Guild, but due to the overthrow of the Golden Kim Eder entrusted Eder to buy the Knight's Book from the Rostal family. Caliphan intervened and now it has become a 3-sided battle between the Academy, the Merchants Guild, and the Rostal family. Caliphan Rostal, the Saint Sword who fell from West Youth, only appears in the 4th scene. He is so powerful that Telly cannot defeat him now. Luckily, at the moment, he is only targeting the Knight's Book. Ed doesn't know what would happen if he defeats the 4th boss of the Knight's Book. In this case, due to the advantage in intelligence, Ed completely lost information and couldn't even surpass the door. The letter details every action of Caliphan Rostal, his suspicions, and ultimately his intention to cooperate with Ed. The letter's author is Princess Pernia. As Principal Ober has found Princess Pernia, he mentioned that the financial situation of West Youth is at risk. Even though West Youth is a royal academy, they cannot easily support themselves. However, if things continue this way, the Merchants Guild will obtain the Knight's Book, the symbol of the academy will be sold. How does Caliphan Rostal know about the current situation of the book and want to buy it? Pernia asked Annalise. The royal guard believes that Ed has reported this incident to the Rostal family to come back. At this moment, a voice denies him. The owner of the voice is Rotel. Pernia is surprised by Rotel's appearance and begins to discuss the Knight's Book. Rotel explains why Caliphan Rostal intervened in the Knight's Book, not because of his mentor's love but because of his father, Eder. When Pernia asked about this, Rotel explained that Caliphan Rostal had entrusted his father, Eder, to buy the Knight's Book. Although his father was overthrown later, the plan to buy the Knight's Book remained unchanged because the Merchants Guild had invested a lot of time and effort into this issue. Pernia asked if the Merchants Guild wants to sell the book to the Rostal family, how could it benefit both sides? Why has it turned into a competitive relationship now? Rotel replied that he does not intend to sell the Knight's Book to the Rostal family because he does not like the customers of the Golden Kim Eder. Pernia asked why he revealed such a secret. Rotel explains that the enemy of the enemy is your friend. Princess Pernia can control the Rostal family. He could get the Knight's Book himself and he also feared that this issue would affect Ed unjustly. Therefore, he spoke out about this, leading to suspicions about him. He was kicked out of the family and started a new life, now being suspected by others. Pernia appears suspicious of whether Ed has any ulterior motives. Rotel is worried that if Ed does not agree, he can only exploit him. Rotel explains why Caliphan Rostal intervened in the Knight's Book, not because of his mentor's love but because of his father, Eder. When Pernia asked about this, Rotel explained that Caliphan Rostal had entrusted his father, Eder, to buy the Knight's Book. Although his father was overthrown later, The plan to buy the Knight's book remained unchanged because the Merchants Guild had invested a lot of time and effort into this issue. Purnia asked if the Merchants Guild wants to sell the book to the Rostal family. How could it benefit both sides? Why has it turned into a competitive relationship now? Rotel replied that he does not intend to sell the Knight's book to the Rostal family because he does not like the customers of the Golden Kim Eder. Purnia asked why he revealed such a secret. Rotel explains that the enemy of the enemy is your friend. Princess Purnia can control the Rostal family. He could get the Knight's book himself, and he also feared that this issue would affect Ed unjustly. Therefore, he spoke out about this, leading to suspicions about him. He was kicked out of the family and started a new life, now being suspected by others. Purnia appears suspicious of whether Ed has any ulterior motives. Rotel is worried that if Ed does not agree, he can only exploit him. Rotel explains why Kelifin Rostal intervened in the Knight's book, not because of his mentor's love but because of his father, Eder. When Purnia asked about this, Rotel explained that Kelifin Rostal had entrusted his father, Eder, to buy the Knight's book. Although his father was overthrown later, the plan to buy the Knight's book remained unchanged because the Merchants Guild had invested a lot of time and effort into this issue. Hearing that the princess wants to use Ed, Rotel is furious. Rotel suddenly laughs. Who wants to use whom? This man is so exhausted that he finally falls asleep for 10 days. The dispute over the Book of Wisdom officially begins. The man wakes up from his drunken stupor to find himself exhausted. Busy times are starting again. Princess Penia and Rotel are discussing the Book of Wisdom. When Princess Penia mentions using Ed, Rotel changes his face mockingly. The palace guards immediately reprimand Rotel for his irrational behavior. Despite Penia's efforts to prevent the guards from intervening, Rotel gets up and leaves. Rotel asserts that despite everyone standing on the same side regarding the Book of Wisdom, he warns Penia seriously. Don't even think about using Ed, as you might end up being used by him, warns Rotel. The royal family demands that Rotel apologize to Penia immediately, but Penia stops him from doing so. This makes Penia reconsider the current situation, realizing that Ed and Griffin Resettler cannot be deceived. Resettler unexpectedly wants to buy the Book of Wisdom. Penia feels the need to be wary of Griffin Resettler more than the Resettler family. Rotel, who is proud of himself, sees Penia's dilemma. When Rotel returns to the Trade Guild, he sees Nenitsa standing next to Ed. Rotel immediately says, unexpectedly, Nenitsa Sr. is here too. Just preparing 2 cups of tea, only left with cold water. Clef Rostiel. Penia feels that she needs to be more cautious with Griffin Resettler than with the Resettler family. Rotel, after knowing this information, even blushes in front of Princess Penia. Penia truly sees Rotel's embarrassment. When Rotel returns to the Trade Guild, he sees Ninika standing next to Ed. Rotel immediately says, I didn't expect Senior Ninika to be here too. He only prepares 2 cups of tea and has no choice but to drink cold water. Ninika says it's okay and asks if the store's tea cabinet has so much tea that they can't invite guests to drink tea. Finally, Ed hands a cup of tea to Ninika. She teases Rotel one last time. Last time, didn't I say it's free? Rotel points out that these items are all defective, but it doesn't matter. Rotel enthusiastically says, the important thing is not whether it can be sold or not, but whether it can help Senior Ed. Ninika mentions to Rotel, last time, didn't I say it's free? Rotel points out that these items are all defective, but it doesn't matter. Rotel says, the important thing is not whether it can be sold or not, but whether it can help Senior Ed. Ninika is very happy and says that Rotel is deliberately refusing Ed. Rotel has received goods from Rotel without paying many times. Rotel says that as long as Ed visits the Trade Guild regularly, a tourism contract is fine. Ninika thinks it's better to pay and end the contract. Rotel says it's between him and Ed, even though they have had a fierce conversation. When Ed can't bear such feelings, his body begins to collapse. In the battle for the Wise Mont's book after 10 days, one must be cautious with Clef Rostiel. Currently, the most important thing is to make a pillow that can be placed on the bed. It's best for it to be full of feathers. Also, the captured deer from yesterday needs to be handled, the cabin cleaned up, and the raw meat prepared. But Ed gradually disappears. In his stupor, Ed hears someone calling him. The callers are Ninika and Rokel. On the other side, Princess Penia has to realize that Ed living alone in the forest without fear, even providing the correct answer in the battle with Grasstan. However, Ed is gradually disappearing in a trance. Ed hears someone calling him. The caller is Ninika and Rokel. On the other side, Princess Penia must realize that the way Ed lives alone in the forest without fear even gives the correct answer in the battle with Grasstan. Cleaning up the small wooden house and preparing the meat for the performance has made Ed gradually disappear in a blurry moment. Meanwhile, Ed still hears someone calling his name. which is Yenica and Raquel in another area at this time. The golden girl Pina has to admit that Ed has lived independently in the forest without panic. Even when friends say that Ed is trying to learn. Raquel warns not to abuse him, forcing Pina to admit that she was wrong. She decides to invite Ed for a talk. When she confirms with the guards the time to meet Ed tomorrow, the guard says he may not come. Because Ed Rosettler is too exhausted and collapses. Pina is surprised by this. Ed's current condition, as well as the announcement of exhaustion due to high fever, diarrhea, extreme fatigue, and passing out. Feeling breathless signals that Ed needs to rest fully to escape the abnormal state. At this moment, Ed is gradually regaining consciousness, feeling only breathless and heavy in body. His lower abdomen feels burning, the main reason being Lucy lying on him. Lucy is saying delirious words, mentioning excessive salt. Ed is surprised to see Lucy asleep here, remembering her weight being lighter than usual, but he can't get up now. Ed analyzes that Lucy's weight hasn't changed, the issue is definitely with him. He also realizes this seems to be his wooden house, a new blanket, and possibly belonging to the Merchant Guild. Lucy wakes up at this moment too. Lucy gathers an amount of magic power and transfers it into Ed's body. She tells Ed that because he has been trying to train in magic and never resting, that's why he has become like this. Ed asks Lucy if he always does this when he sleeps. Lucy explains it's not a difficulty, but he has slept deeply a few times. Ed clearly feels the energy in his body recovering, surely thanks to Lucy. Lucy also says there is always someone looking at him with a special gaze. Very annoyed by that because it's necessary. They say nothing more. Lucy advises Ed not to get sick, as it would be very painful and could die from the illness. If he knew about Lucy Merrill's past, he wouldn't pass over that statement. Lucy sits next to Ed, looking at him like the old man gloated in respiratory distress. Lucy always stands by Ed, enduring the pain from twisted magic. Ed can only say a word of thanks, unable to do anything else. Suddenly, Giggies appears in the wooden house, seeing Lucy sitting on Ed without any expression. Lucy stands up, picks up the wizard hat, and flies out through the chimney. Giggies asks what number person this is. Giggies thinks it's not weird for a strong man to have many women. Perhaps it's the opening of a civilized society. Maybe his view of civilized society is too rigid. Ed decides to clarify the misunderstanding. If left unaddressed, Giggies might reach out to other women. If so, Elka will stand out. According to Giggies, Yenica needs to study due to attendance rates. Raquel must return due to the Merchant Guild's work. Giggies tries to feed Ed, making him unable to swallow. Giggies appears helpless, saying Elka or Clara might be more considerate, but Raquel says women are not allowed. From Giggies' words, he knows what has happened in the past few days. Elvira of the Alchemy Department has concealed the production of unauthorized drugs violating the student union's regulations. The issue has been resolved by Terry and Clevials. The Guild's exploration journey in Chapter 5 has ended successfully. Just like the monsters of Tro's cult have infiltrated the Academy's sewers, an issue resolved by Giggies and Terry. The story of the sewer demons in Chapter 7 seems not to be a problem. Ed wonders to himself how many days he has been asleep. Giggies says Ed has been asleep for 10 days. Hearing this, Ed hastily grabs the bowl from Giggies and drinks the soup in one breath. He didn't expect he had been asleep for 10 days. Ed asks Giggies to text Raquel immediately. On the second day after Ed woke up, the battle for the Philosopher's Book officially begins. The Academy characters are Princess Pina, representing the Merchant Guild Raquel, and another character who never appears according to the original script, the owner of Ross Tyler House Clef Ross Tyler from the last chapter. To push the storyline into the main plot, Duck took advantage of the good feelings of Lo Doc. This was also seized by Lo Doc to write this book. The battle for supremacy ended with Lo Doc's great victory, the fireworks display ended, and not long ago, Princess Bach Nha met the owner of Lac Tai. The owner of Lac Tai, Kha Locke, apologized to Princess Bach Nha. Ed did not understand and caused quite a bit of trouble when he enrolled. Bach Nha no longer cared about this. Kha Locke, Lac Tai, and Lac Thay's lover, all from the same bloodline. But it's not simple. It is said that he is a noble duke, with a kind, intelligent demeanor. Looking from the outside, the servants felt their respect for Kha Locke, but with honest eyes, Bach Nha knew that this man was evil. Kha Locke also realized Lo Doc next to him. Lo Doc naturally stood up, introduced himself, and said that as long as there was a good item, the Chamber of Commerce Emperor would pursue it. Kha Locke still didn't know that he had fallen into Lo Doc's trap. Then the auction of the Workers' Book officially began. The academy required both parties to bid for the worker's book at the highest price they were willing to pay. Ultimately, the highest bidder would win because the principal did not want many people to know that the academy, due to financial difficulties, had sold the worker's book, so they came up with a way to conceal it. They invited Princess Bach Nha to be a witness. The principal claimed to be ill and could not attend. Finally, Deputy Principal Micro represented this auction. The rule was simple: both parties bidding on the worker's book had to bid higher than the other party's known price. The trading method was like Bach Nha researching similar books, having bought the Power Book for 8,100 dong and the Laziness Book held by the royal family for 6,730 dong. The Great Wizard Cloth's phone price is 7,020 dong. Bach Nha analyzed that Lo Doc understood the value of the worker's book, surely also understood the market and prices of these magical books. Lo Doc and Kha Lok wrote their bids. This price was quickly submitted to Deputy Principal Michael. The bid price for the worker's book was unlimited. As long as you knew the opponent's price limit, you could win. Before, Lo Doc had said that as long as there was a good item, the Chamber of Commerce Emperor would follow the money. Lo Doc stated that he bought for profit. If Lo Doc bought to make money, he would not have offered a higher price than the previous highest price of 8,100 dong for the book. Exceeding this price, the book could be a loss for him. In Lo Doc's suggestion, Kha Lok topped the highest price of 8,100 dong by a bit. For the sacred book, Deputy Principal announced the bid price. Kha Lok of Lak Tai 8,500 dong, Lo Doc Kha Han 9,400 dong. The worker's book finally belonged to the Chamber of Commerce Emperor. Princess Bach Nha was surprised, wondering if Lo Doc bought the book not for money. Kha Lok, although angry, still left with someone because he knew he still had a chance to get the worker's book. Only Bach Nha looked confused, not understanding what was happening. She even guessed that the purpose of Lo Doc was to prevent bad people like Kha Lok from getting the worker's book. Quickly she thought this couldn't happen because of the darkness of Lak Tai, which even she, the princess, couldn't find evidence of. She suspected it could be someone's commission or an order. If someone was controlling Lo Doc from behind, that person certainly knew the dark nature of Kha Lok. Only one person knows the dark nature of Kha Lok, Lak Tai, even if he was driven out of the house. Feeling exhausted to the point of almost passing out in the midst of the deserted grassland, Ed still wants to continue confronting the Rosetta family. When Ed Rosetta thinks of Pina, she almost falls over. She blames herself for almost driving that person out of the academy. Meanwhile, on the other side, Rotel is in the academy signing a fake contract to sell the contract to Griffin Rose Taylor. At least, he can receive 8,500 gold, losing 900 gold when buying the Book of Philosophy. Rotel is free to deal with the Book of Philosophy as it belongs to Rotel. Just need a contract to buy the Book of Philosophy. Ed agrees to pay him 900 gold to be able to use Ed at a low price, and Rotel can't contain his secret joy if Queen Pena sees that. After that, Ed learns that the final auction is won by Rotel. Ed knows Rotel likes him, but now he has to focus on dealing with the Rosetta family. Although a bit apologetic to Rotel, Yenica also arrives, and Giggs asks why Yenica is here so early. Yenica says the morning classes have ended, so she came to visit Ed. Ed immediately tells Yenica that he has caused him a lot of trouble recently. Although Rotel apologizes, Yenica arrives before noon. Giggs asks how Yenica got here so quickly when school just ended in the morning. Yenica explains that she finished her morning classes and came to visit Ed. Ed immediately tells Yenica that he is Ed's teacher and can help Ed sign a contract with the fairy immediately. Yenica immediately summons a fairy bird for Ed to feel the fairy's presence. The fairy assumes Ed cannot hear them, but Ed hears the fairy's voice faintly. He has caused a lot of trouble for himself recently when she said nothing and Gus suddenly said he was lovesick because she cried and ran around the school. Only seeing Deep NY Tap summon a planet spirit to cover Cat Tutu's mouth and warn Cat Tutu that the weather is very cold, not wanting to offend. Then pay attention a little. At this time the fire spirit Mac Cash from Deep NY Tap's body emits heat only to see Mac Cash kneel down to the ground and apologize to Ed. He did not expect Ed always tries himself. Ed asks why. Moog explains that he wants to run out and apologize immediately but is afraid of sudden appearances and consumes Ed's energy. So now he can only use the power of the girl Yenica. Nothing when Giggs says Ed fainted for 10 days. That's a big problem. Ed just remembered that he fainted for 10 days and the King of Fish was torn apart because it was not repaired. Without food, Ed can only start again trying. Jenica reluctantly offered to help. Giggs also mentioned the next exam period there is still time, he can also help hunt and be a carpenter. These things just need to be done slowly. We'll all be able to solve at this time. Ed also remembered not long after he was still a fellow traveler in the tent, even though many things happened but all went smoothly past difficult checkpoints. High-level spirit Melodol mentioned Ed now. Seems tired. Melodor also tells Yenny Call that this is an opportunity. The Red Fox is busy doing business, sees this opportunity when it is not beside Ed whether she wants it or not. To get that man, you have to turn into a fox. Start with costumes, and now the rural girl Melita gives this costume 100 points because the man will be seen in another house. It is best to roll up the sleeves and tie the ponytail. Imagine the wonderful feeling of becoming a gentle assistant who has overcome difficulties with Ed and must meet Ed today. This is an expert in love who has never loved. Advice from the high spirit Lin. Then Sao Cap Meryl Daryl. Yenneca listens seriously as Meryl Daryl asks Yenneca for her opinion on helping Ed's roommate today. Yenneca says she has no opinion, which angers Meryl Daryl immediately. Meryl Daryl criticizes Yenneca. This doesn't seem like the right way to do it, does it? Opportunities like this cannot be missed because there is nothing better than sharing hardships together to increase camaraderie. We need to take the opportunity to take care of Ed when he is tired despite often acting foolishly. Now is the time to be more cautious. Yenneca suggests an idea to Meryl Daryl at Ed's small house. Ed drinks soup that Yenneca cooked, different from Gig's soup and very delicious. Ed feels that he cannot continue like this for long and needs to restore his health immediately. However, Ed's current health condition is not good. He even has a headache and fever dimly. Ed realizes that Yenneca is still there at this moment. Yenneca also stretches out of the small house, officially starting the battle with the final boss of Stage 2, Kleist. Surprisingly, just as Ed's body has recovered, he is drawn into a battle with boss Yenneca and Rotel. Open a new round. Stage 2 of punishing Kleist finally officially begins. It's past midnight. Yenneca has not left Ed's small house, smiling brightly as she approaches Ed immediately after. She sits by Ed's bed and says she doesn't know what to do. Yenneca tells Ed that he doesn't need to pretend to not be tired. He knows Ed is trying to survive. And every day he lives harder than others when tired and uncomfortable. Many people console and help themselves, but the biggest source of motivation is the one who always silently stays by your side. Yenneca tells Ed that he has tried very hard. Ed tells Yenneca she doesn't have to do that. Yenneca asks Ed to acknowledge his efforts so he can rest comfortably. Ed is helpless and has to admit and go to sleep under Yenneca's companionship. Ed falls into a deep sleep after a few days. When he wakes up in the morning, Ed sees Yenneca sleeping next to him with drool coming out. This makes Ed unable to hold back his laughter at this point. Ed's body has fully recovered. He realizes his skills in 10 days did not develop as planned. Especially in the study of Manhwa, Ed has to learn step by step because most Manhwa products are rewards from main tasks to avoid affecting the original storyline. Ed cannot force it. However, Turli seems not to care about Manhwa. With memories of past lives, Ed is willing to use past memories to obtain Manhwa items that fall from the main storyline, and he also has someone who can obtain any material at this point. A voice asks Ed what he is thinking. Ed says that when he thinks of someone, that person appears immediately. Rotel immediately says he thought of him. He seems embarrassed. Rotel continues to say that he had to work very hard to preserve his hair and skin and is still busy with academy courses. Ed asks why Rotel came to the North Forest when he was so busy. Rotel explains that you need to rest when your body needs it, and there are some things he wants to say to Ed after Ed leaves the stage. Therefore, changing the name from trade union to corporation needs someone who can manage with him to change the internal business structure. Ed immediately understands Rotel is inviting him. Rotel asks Ed to imagine waking up in the morning and the two being separated by a wall, and he is still one of the controllers. The corporation will share shares with Ed like a couple. Ed interrupts as Rotel is daydreaming because he thinks if he's treated too well, it will be strange. Rotel mentioned that the senior's understanding is not as certain as you think. How could this girl act like that? And it's just the impulsive action of a young girl, but deciding such a big deal like that. Rotel even thinks that Ed finally just wants to maintain the collaboration. Ed immediately explained that he didn't say that. Rotel said that in the business world, every breath is related to hundreds of gold coins. If you don't stab others, you will be stabbed. For oneself, living a lifetime in this world, what he wants most is never to betray oneself. Even abandoned by the whole world, one's own property turned into dust, there will still be someone standing by. For some, it's family, for some, it's a lover, and for some, it's allies who have fought together for decades. Rotel, who has experienced the ups and downs of prosperity, knows that one day he will become like that too. Therefore, that thought makes him live in fear. With a flushed face, Rotel asked Ed if he could stay by his side, but Ed directly told Rotel that it's not necessary. Laughing, he said that Rotel asked why he wasn't deceived, a bit regretful that he was about to succeed. Ed also said that because emotions began to get too excited in the middle. Rodel said that he is also human and will be tense and excited. It's a pity to think that the senior will be attracted, but what he said is not a lie. Ed said he wants to graduate from Shuei Academy and will not leave the academy. Even after graduating, he still doesn't know. Rodel immediately said that he can wait for the senior to graduate and reminded Ed that there is no other choice. Rodel smiled and pulled out a goatskin parchment from his chest, which is the sales evaluation of the Wise Month's book. Rodel said that he will soon return with the free use voucher. Rodel immediately says he can wait for the senior to graduate and reminds Ed that there is no other choice. He just saw Rodel smile brightly and take out a goatskin paper from his chest that is the sales evaluation of the Book of the Wise. Rodel says he will soon return with the free use voucher. Rodel immediately says he can wait until the former student graduates and reminds Ed that there is no other choice. Rodel smiles and takes out a goatskin paper from his pocket that is the contract for buying the Book of Philosophy. Rodel says he will soon return with the free use voucher. After thinking about what will happen, Ed feels like he did something bad and owes someone. Rodel leaves. Rodel prepares to take out a free ticket to end everything, but he sees Ed. The plan has gone awry. If he leaves a little later he will have to shoot the film, but he runs too fast and forgets the loose change that he should have paid to Ed because the magic cave props he bought from Rodel used gold coins. And Rodden runs too fast, forgets not to find Linrodden and doesn't know when he decides to come back and put the loose change back just as Jenica yawns and says Ed should go back to the stream. Rodel and Jenica meet and Rodel asks Jenica why she stepped out of the wooden house and then for Ed why Rodel came here. A new accident begins at this point. On the other side, fire spirit Mac Cash always reminds Ed today meat and vegetables, eat too little rice, dinner must be supplemented a little, no water also needs to be supplemented because Ed is fainting himself, he will die for sure. Ed at this point apologizes to him. He knows Mac Cash more than half is scolded regardless of where there is this misconduct. Under the help of Giggs and Jenica, food and firewood have been well supplemented, also thanks to Ladak Nyi solving the interior design problem for Ed to pay attention to. Alternatively, in the 3 letters received before fainting due to fatigue, Rother's letter stated that Ed didn't know what to do, but was careful with a letter from Queen Penia informing him of Helen Ross Taylor's share. Buk tu kuoi kung la kua gao su kleist noi viet tu cho on I viet rang on I muon gap ed mo min sao ki hok zong vi ed da kong den gap gao su kleist. Duck couldn't fathom the final motives of Boss Kleist. Professor in Act 2. Act 2 has finally commenced. Professor Kleist believes only a select few talented individuals can change the world. To revive the most powerful philosopher in Ziwania's history, he conducted research on natural law that can alter the world's magic soul, but to complete the magic soul ritual, the philosopher's book is required, and after Ziwania Academy sold the book due to Rotel's schemes, Professor Kleist stole the book and merged Ziwania's soul into a body. Era, the possessor of the magic soul, to experiment with creating a new era. This action truly belongs to a mad magician. To rescue the female lead Era, the main character Taylor took strong action to destroy the trap in the underground water chamber and the secret research library's soul. After all plans were thwarted, Professor Kleist stood atop Moda. He then jumped, but before the leap, he seemed to utter a few final words anyway. Act 2 ends. Kleist was apprehended due to the ceremony of the philosopher's book. It was also the day Kleist abducted Taylor's companion, Era, who woke up initially with caution. She thought he feared demons in the underground chamber, but was quickly denied he was fearful due to a love that was also captive. After class, Ed was called by Professor Kleist privately because when Kleist abducted Era, he included Ed in it as well. This disrupted Ed's initial plan. It all began 3 days ago. Ed finally completed all that he had not done during the 10 days of unconsciousness. Professor Kleist tied up Isla and also tied up Ed, breaking Ed's original plan. This refers to 3 days ago when Ed finally finished everything he had not done during 10 days of unconsciousness. Just 10 days of training time without additional measures is somewhat regrettable because Kleist's punishment station is approaching and there is no time to increase dark magic skills. Ed suddenly thought of quickly improving his local dark magic skills at Kleist's secret research station. Kleist's secret research station has 4 battlefields, with the most difficult being the secret research station. But this is where Boss Raina's gate is very strong. Without the holy sword can't be passed. Ed needs the research station key there. There are many things related to dark magic crafting materials. Ed deduces himself as a somewhat dangerous person. He then looks towards Jenica brewing tea. At this moment, Netlister Academy professor announces the main character's game. Ayla from Class C and Adele from Class B moved to Class A. There are only 3 students, but from the next semester, it becomes 5 students and Kleist oversees Class A even though he hasn't existed for many years. Pela and Duck NHI are not outstanding at this time. Giggs also accuses Professor Kleist, raising suspicion what exactly is the A standard. Ultimately, what can make others want to join the A standard student group has resentment. Kleist Professor seems to regard this as his own matter. He himself does not want to waste time on unknown individuals. Giggs then states Professor Kleist disregards normal students and even belittles them, trying to confront Giggs. Professor Kleist, instead of being calm, Giggs apologizes and explains that the most effective way to destroy a person is to cheer him on, making him unaware of his true power. Hearing this, Rotterdam sighs. Rotterdam had investigated the professors at the academy before studying at West Virginia University. Professor Crest's passion for power may stem from his daughter, a normal wizard. Professor Crest's daughter joined the battle with monsters without caution because she was a student of the Havinia Magic Academy. And then she passed away at a very young age. Despite not having talent, she believed she had created this tragedy. Therefore, Professor Crest is very firm with power. Crest then continued to research comfort magic, but he was actually not looking for comfort magic but for the one who created the legend of Havinia. Rottles speculates that transferring Isla to Class A may also be for researching comfort magic. Crest has requested Rottle to find him for a private conversation. Rottle guesses that Professor Crest wants to discuss owning the Book of the Wise. Meanwhile, on the other side of the academy, Assistant Claire is teaching, and Ed has planned for Phase 2 of the game, which is to follow the main character Teddy to pick up equipment when defeating the boss. Ed has prepared a detailed list necessary for this, especially in Level 3, the Eye of Blocket and the Sand Clock of Daleheim must be obtained. These are not necessary for Teddy, so picking them up on his own is fine. You can also admire the main character Teddy's achievements in passing the levels, a perfect plan. Just wait for the day of punishment at the public square. Then tell Yenica that something has fallen into the water and ask her to help search together. When Yenica is very enthusiastic, Ed feels a bit awkward. Just as Ed praises his perfect plan, a voice calls him. And that person is Assistant Claire, requesting Ed to come to Professor Crest's laboratory. Since he lost consciousness last time and couldn't meet him, Ed thinks Professor Crest may have something important. In Crest's laboratory at this time, Isla is on guard. Even though Ed did nothing, she was already like that. Because of the complex relationship between Ed and Crest, Ed asks what Crest is doing here if tomorrow's battle, where Crest is also kidnapped. What is he doing here? The sudden answer appears in Ed's mind as he searches for documents and notes. He then quickly reads the content on it. Since Ed knew most of the content, he could also guess the current situation. Ed also found a report about himself on the table. He guessed it was the document that Assistant Claire had sent to Crest about what Ed had done in the Ophelus event. As Crest's footsteps got closer, Ed pulled out a small knife to warn Isla, who looked worried and called for help. At this time, Professor Crest also returned to the laboratory and witnessed this scene. Isla ran to Crest for protection but immediately saw Crest summoning a new magic, Time Prison, to imprison Isla. Crest did not hesitate and immediately attacked Ed. Ed immediately reacted and attacked Crest. Ed called Mog to attack because the knife had engraved a blasting spell. Just one explosion and the laboratory exploded. Facing the explosion, Crest praised Ed for understanding the situation quickly and reacting so swiftly. Crest also suspected that Ed had only glanced through a few documents and already guessed his intentions. At this point, Ed said he had captured Isla, and no longer needed to capture him. Ed affirmed that his mouth was very discreet and did not blurt out. Crest explained that he had his own plan. Ed analyzed that even if he escaped from here, Crest would not let him go and could affect the development of Phase 2 of the drama. If you get kidnapped here, you might end up locked in the third door. Ed feels decisively captured, forgets to resist. Kleist thought Ed might have a new plan, but he still launches the prison time. He catches Ed and Highlap Kleist. At first, he doubted Ed couldn't achieve such results in the wilderness, couldn't imagine how hard Ed worked. Ed might be the Black Curtain or the mastermind, but through the crystal ball, he sees Ed's fighting style and realizes Ed's extraordinary combat ability, clearly belonging to the weak. That's how the weak win. It's not talent, it's the result of effort. This scene reminds Professor Kleist of his daughter Ella's initial plan to kidnap. Ed is momentarily inspired. He even believes Ed's circle of acquaintances isn't large. Disappearing for a few days won't cause much chaos. At that moment, Professor Kleist carelessly releases the fire spirit. From Ed's sleeve, a light beam disappears in the horizon. At this time, Ed's small wooden house, Jenica, cooks chicken soup, waiting for someone to return to enjoy. Lucy is also in a small wooden house, dozing off somewhere. The second scene finally reveals the boss main battle, while Lucy officially enters the main stage. Could become the hidden second act. A few decades ago, there was an outstanding great magician who traveled the Great Southern Avenue, looking at the world, discovering many unknown magics. He felt unworthy of the title of great magician. He remembers his master, Grand Master Savinia, who lost his master when he was young, causing him so much pain that he only left with sorrow. He officially becomes Lucy's master, something that Gertrude lost. One day, you will also have to become strong. Gertrude died of illness, leaving Lucy a book on magic of the southern continent. The wounds of an important person will heal one day, and he will forget the sadness, only holding dry meat in his hand. When he opens it, he sees Ed not preparing dried meat on the roof. Just then, as the wind spirit Mo Lang Mak arrives to find Yen Nagi Kha, upon hearing the report, Yen Nagi Kha is clearly angry. Lucy still doesn't know Ed has been kidnapped. Meanwhile, in the meeting room of the Western VNHA Academy today is the day to award the Book of the Divine. Just as Phong Lin Mok Lang Mak came to find Yen Nagi Kha when he heard Phong Lin Mok Lang Mak report, clearly angry Lucy still does not know that Ed has been kidnapped. On the other side, in the meeting room of the Western Vin NHA Academy today is also the day of awarding the Book of Angels. Representative of the Chamber of Commerce Ed Rotel and Principal Great Master Ap Bok officially met. Ed Rotel exclaimed that Principal Great Master Ap Bok and Krian Flo Sialak are the same age but have completely different impressions. Ladak Nyi once secretly negotiated a request for a transfer of a fake good faith letter. Ladak Nyi did not think about giving Hoang Nu Boy Nyi a standard appearance to prepare to sell the fake good faith letter to Kak Li Fan. Ladak Nyi priced it at 12,000 gold coins. Kak Li Fan also did not bargain. Krifin reminded Rotel that Ed had hired a mercenary team to buy Sivinia and hoped that Rotel would not let the Book of the Philosophers be bought by the witnessing of Professor Kleist. Ed Rotel thought that he would soon be able to use love freely in his heart. There is also a little emotion. Suddenly a huge magic circle under the Book of Angels was activated at the same time. A demonic statue resembling a monster was summoned as everyone was trying to stop the attack of the Rotel monster. It was discovered that the Book of Wisdom had disappeared. Professor Crest, the keeper of the Book of Wisdom, was preparing to cast a teleportation spell. A purple light flashed, and Crest disappeared along with the Book of Wisdom right before their eyes. Rotel was furious, feeling his freedom infringed upon with Ed missing. Meanwhile, on the other side, in Professor Crest's secret research room, Aila sensed a frightening presence. It seemed Professor Crest had the Book of Wisdom. A shadowy figure appeared, silencing Aila, threatening that any disturbance would unleash the flesh-eating monsters in the sewer system. The figure was a researcher from the Institute of Biology, warning that Ed and Aila should not be disturbed unless ordered by Crest. He was preparing to use them for an experiment. Seeing Ed's lack of fear, he cautioned Ed to be careful. Ed believed that if he continued this way, Teddy would come with a punitive army. The only thing bothering him was being with Aila. Aila warned Ed that if he acted against him, he would harm himself. Ed solemnly told Aila that he meant no harm. In fact, when Ed played the game from Teddy's perspective, he quite liked Aila. But Aila was entirely unresponsive. Ed said that in the previous semester's exams, he was wrong. However, he had his reasons, and in the battle against Draskin, he had also lent a hand. Ed told Aila that even if he didn't believe in himself, he should believe in Teddy. Teddy would surely come to save them. Aila had no trust at all. Standing before them was Edrose Tyler. At that moment, the spirit of Shaggy Moog approached. Moog asked Ed if he was injured, tired, if his vision and hearing were impaired. He explained that because Ed's soul perception was only average, it took him a long time to arrive. Ed questioned Moog about his whereabouts before. Aila was surprised that Ed had only basic magic skills in the previous semester. He explained that due to Ed's average soul sensitivity level, it took him a long time to arrive. Ed grabbed Moog and asked where he had been before. Aila was surprised that Ed's basic magic skills in the previous semester were just average. Now he could control the living soul. Aila said the soul could secretly seek help from teachers and staff outside. But Ed wanted the story to continue without any more variables. At that moment, Moog spoke. Although he couldn't protect Ed completely, in emergency situations, he learned more carefully than any other soul. Then Miss Yenica became extremely angry, her beautiful face contorted. The fishmonger. And the little magician always wearing a wizard hat. Moog reassured Ed not to worry, they would surely succeed in escape. Hearing Lucy approaching, Ed was furious, wanting to crush Moog's soul into the strongest hidden boss because of Lucy. Near the end, Lucy and Professor Crest met. Crest had no way to convince Lucy to become his companion. Lucy, the genius, could not be defeated, so Crest and Lucy meeting had to be prevented. Ed could only try to escape from the dungeon to prevent everything from happening. He took Mog out of the noisy cell, awakening the guards to protect Mog, shouting that he would leave. The guard warned Ed that if he caused a commotion, the monster would eat him. After leaving without looking back, Aila wondered about Ed's situation. The soul of Mog had successfully obtained the key. Mog praised Ed's strong leadership skills and asked how Ed knew the key's location. It all starts from the fact that Max COC has done some extra work that only Aduk can solve. So Aduk successfully opened the prison door, but when he stepped outside, he closed it back with Ilap. Aduk told Ilap that there are many monsters outside. The magical phenomena of the experiment are actually very dangerous. Just listen to them obediently and nothing will happen. If they find out missing, honestly say that Aduk has run away. Aduk also said that Ilap is not strong enough to run away. Ilap wants to say more, but Aduk stopped him. Aduk said he will lead the rescue team and stand by his side, asking Ilap to wait. So Aduk decided to act alone to prevent everything from happening. Because of Mac Cock's actions, the storyline has changed. Aduk can solve information from previous lives, such as Yen Nai Cie participating but unable to defeat the enemy Mok Ha, the strongest in the world. So Aduk must stop Lucy. The encounter between Mei Loi and Jok Tuyet, two girls still fighting for a man they don't know their house has been stolen by someone else. Shortly after, Aduk and Ilap were kidnapped by Jok Tuyet, opening the final act with the final boss. The main character Tai Loi is seeking help to save Ilap, who is full of wounds, and found Jig's training and asked Jigs to help him save Ilap. Meanwhile, Rod Dick is still discussing with the principal about the Wise Mon's book. Yen Nai Cie found the entrance to the sewer leading to the Soul Library Research Center because Aduk knows that researchers will release monsters. So he arrived there first. Currently, Aduk must prevent Lucy from meeting Jok Tuyet. Passing through the Soul Library is a bit difficult because there is a librarian guarding the Soul Library, Lena, who used to be Aduk when playing games. Knowing Lena's operating model, even if there is a fight, Aduk can easily defeat him. But this will take away Tai Lois' important experience. In the end, there will be a monster that can only be defeated by Tai Lois' Holy Sword skill. If the main character Tai Loi does not enhance his strength, he will naturally not be able to complete the game's ending. The second level is where Tai Loi must defeat Da Lo 2, Alchemy Level 3 team leader, along with assistant Claire, to help Tai Loi grow up. Helping the demon of the sewage and the Soul Library with the most experience, Lena. Not wanting to disturb Tai Lois' main storyline, Aduk can only secretly take some alchemy items. With familiarity with the environment, Aduk easily collected many alchemy items. And some items he wants to own but can only come next time. Aduk is hiding among the bookshelves to avoid Lena's inspection. At this time, the ground trembles gently as if suddenly an earthquake. At first, Aduk thought it was just his illusion, but the strong tremor made all the bookshelves covering Aduk's body fall. Librarian Lena immediately noticed Aduk, but Aduk remained calm. Because escaping is not difficult, just need to escape from Lena's attack range. 30 minutes before the earthquake in Root Dick, the professors were still fighting the ghostly figures summoned by Jok Tuyet. Although the ghostly figures were quickly resolved, Root Dick dislikes those who violate the spirit contract, even though it is inevitable. He told Principal Aubert that if this deal fails, Sevenya Academy's reputation will be affected. Facing numerous challenges, the principal promised Rothiel that the school would ensure the discovery of the Book of Virtue. He requested Rothiel's patience, assuring him that no matter what schemes Crest was plotting, it would not end well. Rothiel immediately inquired about the significance of this statement. The principal could only reveal that Professor Crest was researching forbidden magic related to resurrecting the dead. Rothiel asked the principal if he knew about it, then questioned why he did not intervene. The principal was also curious about the resurrection of the dead. Crest always claimed that talented individuals drive the world's progress. He always praised the virtuous, such as Havinia and her young daughter who perished due to reckless confidence. Principal Ober immediately asked Rothiel that if the resurrection magic were successful, who did he think Crest would bring back to life? Rothiel couldn't fathom such a scenario. At that moment, someone informed Crest that he had fled into the sewer system. Tai was still in pursuit. It was said that Crest not only stole the Book of Virtue but also abducted Tai's first-year student friend, Ilatrice, and second-year student, Edrose Taylor. Upon hearing that Ed was also kidnapped, Rothiel's expression changed. Suddenly, noise escalated outside the window. Rothiel became calmer. He analyzed that Principal Ober was the most powerful mage of this era. Ober promised to retrieve the Book of Virtue, ensuring Ed's rescue is successful. With Ed's rescue guaranteed, the wisest choice was to wait. Rothiel then unexpectedly snatched the binoculars, observing a trembling direction. It was the entrance to the sewers, where a massive soul-fired tower spewed flames. Behind him stood a girl, Yenica, a third-year student. Seeing this, Rothiel could no longer remain calm. He declared he would also go. His reason was that Principal Ober had shown no interest in the matter, so he had to save the Book of Virtue himself. Rothiel declared that only a few negotiators remained. Others would follow him into the sewers. The combat strength of Dorosi, the head of the third-year crafting room, was formidable. Even L, the first-year head, and Norton, the second-year head, often sought his guidance. Dorosi was not prominent in his first year. Crest, who discovered his talent, had aided him significantly. Dorosi, once the first-year head, had collapsed in fear. Crest was too much for himself. He faced an unbeatable enemy, a high-level soul-fired tower spewing flames. He also recognized the pink-haired girl, Princess Yenica, beloved by all. Yenica immediately asked Dorosi about Ed's whereabouts. Dorosi replied that he was just waiting and then collapsed. Yenica still didn't know where Ed was. She remained calm, recalling Ed's location and feeling a headache. Only then did she realize the girl lying on the ground was Barosi, a third-year student. Yenica carefully handed a cloth to Barosi, placing it on her head. At this moment, Rothiel and the group arrived. Just as Yenica covered Barosi with a cloth, Rothiel analyzed that Yenica was the strongest force after Lucy. He couldn't imagine Yenica's appearance after saving Ed, perhaps because of this. Ed and Yenica would begin to fall in love, maybe even step into marriage. Remembering this, Rothiel couldn't adjust himself. He directly told Yenica that Ed had indeed been rescued but was severely injured during his abduction. He lay on the bed of the wooden house, asking Fairy Leaf time and time again when he would come to see him. Rother planned to get Fairy Leaf out first, and then go save Ed himself. But Fairy Leaf refused to believe it and immediately asked him why he wanted to tell him. After finding Ed's position, Fairy Yi kept staring at the entrance. How could Ed be saved who saved him because he was the first, who could save him from where he couldn't see? Fairy Yi usually looks innocent and lovely, but when it comes to Ed Rother, she becomes very intelligent. She says without embarrassment, maybe Ed has not been rescued yet. Fairy Yi asks Rother if he wants to use the power of the Chamber of Commerce to find Ed. Putting guild members who are not good at fighting in danger is despicable, isn't it? It's really dangerous. According to Fairy Yi, Rother felt that Fairy Yi was actually her #1 enemy. Fairy Yi said he tried to seek help from Lucy, but Rother didn't listen. Just yawned and took a walk alone. Fairy Yi told Rother that she also wanted to act alone. Rother agreed. Now is not the time to obstruct each other. Rother told his guild members to stand there waiting for Fairy Yi to come from the east. When two people separated, Rother walked out from the opposite direction and accelerated as they turned on the drainage system, because the world has always been ruthless. Who could finally save Ed from danger? At this moment, Ed was discovered by Lena's soul, and cracks appeared on the floor. An explosion sounded, and a white light hit Lena's soul. Ed sighed, hoping it was an earthquake. A large stone falling from the ceiling knocked Lena's soul unconscious. She stretched her body as usual. That was Lucy Merrill. She seemed to be still sleeping. Lucy told Ed that she was bored, so she came to save him. The battle between Fairy Yi and Rother came to an end. People were running around for survival. Ed had just emerged from the sewer and discovered a new storyline on the roof of Ophelia's college. The old principal said we should interfere. It's really okay, Principal Obel explained. Although it's a bit dangerous, it's a development opportunity for students. The teacher said there's no need to rush. Now is the best golden age in Swiss history. Among the students of Swinian Institute through the generations, there has never been such a prominent period in the past. There was only 1 or 2 bright stars among the students. But this year is a combination of many talents. The principal believes that the heavens may be warning themselves the institute may encounter major challenges. And these talents are the minimum conditions to overcome difficulties. On the other hand, Lucy has created a large hole in the drainage system to save Ed and the soul of Lena knocked down by the wind. Ed hears Lucy repeating something. Even he knows that he is about to ask what's next. Not surprisingly, Lucy asks if there is any jerky. When she hears there is no jerky, Lucy is ready to find a place to sleep, but Ed stops Lucy. Until now Fairy Deep NY and Roddle have entered the drainage system. Now we have to stop Fairy Deep NY and Roddle. Based on the development of Tali, she can defeat most big bosses, even skip some small bosses without causing major problems in the storyline. The issue now is that Lucy may encounter Professor Crest. Ed puts his hand on Lucy and says, "Don't go anywhere, stay with me." Lucy asks why Ed is trying to find a reason frantically. Lucy is like a stray cat wandering outside. No one knows her thoughts, can't predict her actions. Lucy stated that she doesn't need to be by Ed's side anymore because Ed is safe. Ed explained that Lucy is strong and will be safe by his side. Lucy declined and told Ed that it's his job to stay by her side. As they left the underground dungeon, Lucy told Ed that if he wants to leave, she can lead him out immediately. Ed said that before they leave, he needs to do something. Despite Lucy's reluctance, she agreed to Ed's request but added a condition. Lucy opened her arms and looked at Ed with cold eyes. Ed lifted Lucy onto his shoulders, beginning their solitary journey. Ed prepared what was necessary from the library before heading to the underground to find Yenica and Rotel to leave together. When a group of bats attacked, Ed used fire magic to deal with them. The system also announced that Ed's fire magic skill had been enhanced. Ed expressed the satisfying feeling of gaining his character's own experience, quietly apologizing to Tai Li, the main character of the game. On the other side, Rotel, relying on his exceptional magic perception, found the entrance ahead of Yenica. It was a sturdy prison wall. Reflecting on his current self with great kindness that cannot be described by money, when the wall exploded, Rotel realized who stood before him. Using one's best intentions to help someone is a relationship that cannot be described by money. As Rotel pondered, his heart raced as a wall suddenly exploded. Rotel recognized the person standing before him. That person was Ed, who had been kidnapped. When Rotel told Ed that he arrived just in time to help, he asked for some items. Rotel exclaimed that they were all advanced formula drawings. After realizing this, he asked Ed if he had been kidnapped. Ed said he had been kidnapped, although he didn't know what had happened, but it was resolved. It was then that Rotel noticed Lucy standing on Ed's shoulders. Rotel also knew that no matter how powerful a witch was, they couldn't defeat Lucy. It was a battle that couldn't be won from the start. Although Lucy didn't have feelings for Ed yet, she always stood by him. Rotel thought to himself that this was too dangerous. Nia was too timid to act aggressively. He remembered the last time he kissed Ed. Hurrying home once, a careless move caused a lamp to fall and almost set the forest on fire. Every time he met Ed, he had to put on makeup, find ways to connect and build trust, but now Ed was holding another girl in front of him. Ed told Rotel to hand over the book, and if the guild needed ingredients, please prepare them. Rotel wanted to refuse, thinking he should show a strong attitude to control the situation, but Ed suddenly approached and said to only trust him. Before this surprise attack, Rotel even felt that Ed had crossed the line. Hearing Ed say to only trust him, Rotel was puzzled. Blushing, Rotel asked Ed if he needed a receipt. Rotel felt deceived. At that moment, a voice interrupted their conversation. It was a guild employee who came to report that King Ed and mercenaries were approaching. Meanwhile, the student pair Telly and Jigs were in the dark sewer of Clavel, saying there was no need to go so deep. Alvera, the head of the chemical department, immediately criticized Clavel. So why do we have to save Ed? Roste, the main character of the game, Tai Lei, once again requested Clarewell to express his desires. Jigs also told Clever that when they came here, they should not think about retreating. One of their teammates called himself the romantic prophet Adel. At this moment, he was talking about something ahead. Every time the romantic prophet Adel spoke, it was as if he had seen the future. He pointed to the entrance ahead and said that their opponent this time was very strong. With just one loud bang, the entrance was shattered, a giant fire lizard holding a figure of another person pleading. The figure was still trying to explain that it was just a simple accident. That figure was Assistant Claire with foam on Yenica's mouth, also wondering if she was lost. At this moment, she seemed to discover something. The fire spirit Takan looked over at Yenica, who greeted them. Only Jigs responded in a friendly manner. Terry and the others looked at Yenica in fear because the fear they had experienced before had resurfaced. Terry and Elvira even equipped themselves with weapons ready to fight. Yenica wondered what was happening. Jigs reminded Terry to stay calm, but Terry was focused on saving Isla and completely ignored him. At this moment, a figure from another entrance stepped out. That person was Ed. Yenica asked Ed if he was injured. Terry and Elvira looked at Ed as if he were a deity. Elvira whispered Terry's name, indicating that they should retreat now because they had fought with Ed before. Ed only needed to use basic magic and a bow to deal with them. His abilities could be considered tactical expertise. Although Terry had matured a lot after the incident at Ophilus Institute, if it were just Yenica alone, she might still be able to overcome the difficulties. But now, with Ed in the center and Yenica, Rotel, Lucy on both sides, the balance was too skewed. Terry assessed that their chances of winning against them were slim. If Ed wanted to block their path, they surely couldn't penetrate. The one disrupting the atmosphere was Ed. He calmly told Terry that Isla was waiting for him to pass through the intersection naturally. Terry should follow the game plot, and the events in the game would be solved by himself. Ed was also ready to capture Gold King Ed. Benica kindly asked Ed if he was injured. At this moment, Telly and Elvira looked at Ed with determination. Elvira whispered to Telly that for now, we should retreat because they had fought with Ed. Ed relied only on magical foundations and a bow. They could cope with them. His abilities could be considered tactical expertise. Although after the incident at Ophilis Tavern, Terry had matured a lot. If it were just Veronica alone, she might reluctantly break through the current character centered on Ed. The actual strength of both sides was significantly different. Analyzing the probability of winning against them was 0. If Ed wanted to block the way, they definitely couldn't break through. The one disrupting the atmosphere was Ed. He calmly told Tai Loi that Ilo was waiting for you, a duck, to pass through the intersection naturally. Tai Loi should follow the game plot, capture Kyla, and solve the game's events himself. A duck was also ready to capture Von Hoang Nok An.